And here we have Schiit Audio's very own Vidar amplifier, which is basically a 22-pound, 2-channel Class AB stereo amplifier. It puts out 100 watts at 8 ohms and 200 watts at 4 ohms. And coming in at $699 US, this amplifier is built very well for its price point. Now, let's go to the back. Okay, we're at the back of the Vidar amplifier, and before I go over anything on the back panel, let's talk about size and dimensions very quickly. Overall, the Vidar amplifier is 13 inches in length, but if I was to count in these 5-way speaker binding posts, it's almost 13.5 inches in length. Now, when I measured from one side to the other side, basically measuring across, I got 9 inches. Now when I measured the actual height of the Vidar amplifier, it was almost 4 inches in height. So overall, the Vidar has a very small form factor. But coming in at 22 pounds, when I go to pick it up, it does feel very robust, meaning the casing is built very good overall. So now, back here on the back panel, first thing you're going to notice is the 5-way speaker binding post, and they are of very good quality for the Vidar's price point. And over here in the top middle, we have our power IEC inlet, and it does actually have 3 prongs instead of 2 prongs. Personally, I prefer 3 prongs, but that's for another video. Now next to that, look what Schiit Audio incorporated was actually a fuse inlet that is on the outside of the amplifier. This makes it very convenient if a fuse ever goes bad or blows basically. It'll be easy for you to change out. I have other amplifiers when the fuse do blow, I actually had to take off the top cover to get to them. So kudos to Schiit Audio for incorporating that. Now over here we have our main power toggle switch. This turns the power completely off and turns the power completely on. One of the caveats I've had with the Vidar amplifier is there's no standby button at all. You either have to have the amplifier off or you have to have the amplifier on. But one of the things that was a problem for me with the Vidar amplifier, no matter how I turn the components off in my hi-fi system, every time I went to turn the Vidar amplifier off, I got this little bit of static feedback that would go to my speakers. Yes, it was at very low levels, so I got online and I looked it up to see if anybody else had this problem. And there was quite a few people had this problem. And one person told me, was like, hey TJ, I was told by Schiit Audio to leave the amplifier on at all times, and this is one of the reasons why the engineers at Schiit Audio incorporated their intelligent microprocessor, which basically oversees important aspects of the amp, such as DC offset, overcurrent, and even over temperature. I was like, well, that's cool to leave it on, because after I have it on for an hour, it does sound its best. But when I leave it on, even if I'm not driving my speakers, I am pulling 45 watts from the wall. So I just want you all to be aware of that. Now down here below we have our single-ended RCA inputs when you want to use the Vidar as a stereo amplifier. Now if you want to use it as a monoblock, you would have to buy 2 of them, and you would have to use this XLR input that you see down here in the middle. Now when you use 2 Vidar amplifiers, yes, the power into 8 ohms jumps up to 400 watts, says Schiit Audio, but they have no specs at all when using the Vidar as monoblocks into a 4 ohm load. But anyways, I wanted to go over that with you all. So now let's jump straight into the overall sound impressions and comparisons for you all. Let's get straight into this. I'm going to go over with you all very quickly my subjective humble opinion of the overall sound character and sound performance of Schiit Audio's very own Vidar amplifier. Now I basically bought this amplifier about a year ago, and I've used a lot of different preamps and I've rode through a lot of different speakers with the Vidar amplifier. There is no way possible today that I could talk about all of them on video, or this video would be way too long. So down below in the description box, I will link all the audio gear that I used with the Vidar amplifier. And if you have a question about any of them, just ask me down in the comment sections and I will get right back to you. Now to kick this off, I want to get straight into what should someone's expectations be if they were to purchase the Vidar amplifier, which is basically $699 US. Well, for one, I would say that, you know, the Vidar amplifier is going to be a step above. You know, if you're someone using like a average home theater receiver as your 2-channel stereo setup, if you was to hook up, you know, a good preamp to the Vidar amplifier, yes, it's going to be a step above that. But I had a subscriber ask me, he's like, TJ, I know you own a lot of integrated amplifiers. He's like, is there any way that you could compare the Vidar amplifier just to the built-in amps on your integrated amplifiers? And if so, can you tell me the price range that I could expect the Vidar amplifier to be able to hold up at or compete with when it comes to integrated amplifiers? I was like, well, this has a lot to do with what preamp you're going to have hooked up to it. But with my research online, a lot of people really liked the Schiit Saga Plus, the one with the 2 buffer stage. They really like it paired up with the Vidar amplifier. I said that would probably be the way to go. And with, you know, that $400 preamp, which I've had a lot of preamps hooked up to it, but not the Saga, I would say overall the Vidar amplifier, when it comes to like integrated amplifiers, and I even use the preamps or pre-outputs of my integrated amplifiers to drive the Schiit Vidar. That's a lot of fun. If you've never done that, you should try it. But I would actually say the Vidar amplifier, yes, it would compete, you know, with my integrated amplifiers built-in amp from about a price range of about $1,200 to $1,400 US overall. I just want to keep people's expectations in check. No, the Vidar amplifier does not sound twice its price point. I just want to keep your expectations in check on that. It's no giant killer. Basically, for its price point, to me, it is a very fair deal. I've ran this amplifier for weeks and weeks at a time, never had a problem with it, and the overall sound performance is good, again, for its price point. Now, one of the pre-amplifiers that I bought to hook up to the Vidar, that is no other than Schiit Audio's very own Schiit Freya Plus. I think I paid around $1,000 US for it, and I'll tell you all something, for its price point, all the inputs and outputs and the performance of the Freya Plus was very surprising to me overall, because I used that preamplifier with a lot of my amps. But when I paired it up to the Vidar amplifier, when I was using the Freya Plus, a lot of you may already know that the Freya Plus has 3 different preamp output stages. You have basically passive mode, JFIT mode, and tube gain stage mode that has a 12 dB gain, and it uses the 6 SN7 pre-tubes in its output stage. Now that's the one that I used mostly with the Vidar amplifier, but the pairing to me overall, you all, I hate to say this, but I gotta be straight up, is the synergy wasn't really there for me. One of the first things that I noticed was I had to take the Freya Plus volume control and I had to turn it all the way up to 12 o'clock on the volume dial to start getting some really good sound out of my speakers. And when I really wanted to rock out and listen to volumes up to 95 to 100 dB, yes, I had to turn it all the way up, the Freya Plus, to 2 o'clock to 2:30 on the volume dial. And with some music, when I was up there at 2:30 on what we call the volume dial or the volume clock dial, the overall treble coming out of the Vidar was just a little bit too much for me. Now, I'm not taking anything away from the Freya Plus at all. I just don't think they actually had that synergy together. And then I thought to myself, hey TJ, maybe your transports aren't putting out enough signal into the preamplifier of the Freya Plus that is running to the amplifier. So I used different transports and I got the same results. So overall, in my opinion, the Freya Plus just didn't pair up good with the Vidar amplifier. But hey, if you own the combo and you love it, then I am more than happy for you overall. I had a lot of preamplifiers hooked up to the Vidar, but one of my favorite preamplifiers was no other than my Burson Composer that I actually call a DAC preamp, meaning I use it as a DAC more than I do as a preamp. Now if we see here on the back of the Composer, I have my single-ended outputs and I have my fully XLR balanced output. Yes, I used the single-ended outputs. And the cool thing about the Burson Composer is it does have a volume control where you can just sit back and play with the volume. But the awesome thing about the Burson Composer DAC preamp is when you're in preamp mode, that output is very low impedance. It's like 25 ohms. That is very low. Not only that, the Burson Composer has two different gain stages. It has a low stage and a high stage. And when I put it on the high stage with the Burson Composer hooked up to the Vidar amplifier, you all, oh my goodness, the overall sound was so clean and transparent and dynamic. I was like, my jaw about hit the floor. But again, this is a $1,200 DAC preamp from Burson Audio. And you know, it's a $700 amplifier, so altogether that was $1,900 US altogether. So I got online to see what other people were saying on the forums about the Vidar amplifier. And a lot of people out there, I mean a whole lot, recommend to use the cheaper budget preamplifier from Schiit Audio, no other than the Schiit Saga Plus that has a 2-buffer built inside. I guess those output impedance and the input impedance of the Vidar, they match up just a little bit better. But again, you all, I'm not taking nothing away from the Vidar. I'm not taking anything away from the Freya Plus. When I had the Freya Plus hooked up to my outboard amplifiers that were up to $2,500 US, yes, the Freya Plus done a very good job. And overall, I know this is going to be crazy to say, but you know, the Vidar amplifier comes in at $700 US. The Schiit Freya Plus comes in at $1,000 US. And if I was to take the Freya and verse it against the Vidar amplifier, if we're talking about performance, I would say the Vidar is like 65 to 70% of the performance of the Freya Plus. Again, I'm not taking nothing away from the Vidar. I just want to be straight up with you all. So now, let's go ahead and talk about what the Vidar amplifier sounds like all together after rolling so many speakers and preamplifiers with the Vidar. Well, basically, when it comes to that, you know, that full body sound, that flesh and body, yes, this little 22-pound Class AB amplifier, it does have good weight to it overall. You know, I wouldn't call it muscular kind of sounding amplifier at all, but I wouldn't call the amplifier sounding lean. If we had a scale 1 to 10, 1 being lean, 10 being very muscular when it comes to that overall fullness and bass out of the Vidar amplifier, I would put it at about a 4.5 to a 5 overall. And again, when it comes to the low-end bass, the Vidar done a very good job with my speakers that were even harder to drive. I mean, speakers like one of my favorite speakers to hook up to the Vidar amplifier was no other than my Elac UB52s. These speakers love power. They are a 4-ohm speaker, in my opinion. I don't care what specs say. And they're about 86 dB efficiency. And one thing I noticed when it came to Class AB power, that the Elacs like my heavyweight integrated amplifiers that were like 30 pounds plus. But when I used the Schiit Vidar, the Vidar actually drove the Elacs effortlessly overall. So that was really good to hear. But I would say the Vidar amplifier, yes, it has that, you know, Schiit Audio sound to it. It's a little bit on the warm side of neutral. The top end, you know, has a little bit of boost to it, or what I would call, you know, that grittiness overall. But to even make this more simpler for you all, let's go ahead and have a comparison against a cheaper budget 2-channel stereo amplifier, Iota's very own PA3. So I'm going to take a break and be right back. Maybe I shouldn't have used the word grittiness when describing the top end of the Vidar amplifier. I think a word that better suits the Vidar amplifier in the top end is it has this sizzle to it, you all. It's like the lower treble has a little bit of emphasis on it to really help, to bring out those details in a more airy sound stage overall. And I've experienced this with other Schiit audio products. Basically, a lot of them are on the warm side of neutral, and a lot of them have just a little bit of emphasis in that lower treble overall. That has been my experience. So now, let's get straight into that comparison of the Schiit Vidar versus one of my super duper budget friendly 2-channel stereo amplifiers that is also Class AB, no other than Iota Electronics PA3, which is basically a power amplifier. Now this amplifier comes in at $399 US. And as far as bang for the buck, the Iota has always made for me a very easy recommendation, especially for people just getting into hi-fi and they're on a very, tight budget overall. But what was surprising to me, you all, is when I A/B tested the two amplifiers against each other, I was really shocked of how well that the Iota was competing with the Vidar amplifier. And yes, there is $300 difference in the price point, with the Vidar being a little bit more expensive overall. But the Vidar is 22 pounds of Class AB, and the PA3 is 15 pounds of Class AB. But when it comes to that overall, that overall fullness and body of the overall sound, they are both almost on the same playing field. I would just slightly give that edge to the Vidar amplifier. Now, one thing I do want to mention that's going to be important for people, don't mean to get off subject, but the Vidar does come with a 5-year warranty when you buy it from Schiit Audio. Now, the Iotavx, I think it has a year or maybe 2-year warranty. I'm not 100%. Down in the description box, I will find out and let you all know. But anyways, let's start off with the low-end bass, comparing them against each other. One thing I will tell you is the Vidar amplifier, it does have a little bit more speed and control and grip over the Iota amplifier, but the Iota was right on the ass of the Vidar amplifier. The Iota, yes, the bass does sound just a little bit warmer overall, and it sounds a little bit more rounder in my humble opinion. I have two different listening rooms, and yes, I A/B test them against each other in them two different rooms overall. Now, when we talk about the mid-range, this is where you're going to hear most of your instruments and vocals, the major part of the texture and tonality overall. And again, it was very close comparing the two. Yes, the Iotavx PA3, it does sound a little bit warmer than the Vidar, but just a little bit. That is very settled, you all. And the Vidar sounds just a little bit cleaner. And actually the male and female vocals, I gotta give the W or the win to the Vidar amplifier. Again, that's to be expected over its price point, but the Iotavx PA3 was right on its ass. And it really depends on what kind of speakers you had. If you had speakers that had a mid-range that sounds a little, a little bit too cool sounding, hell, you may want to go with the Iotavx PA3. But if you had a speaker that didn't sound as cool, let's say it had maybe a little bit of warmth, it was pretty neutral, then yes, I'd say the Vidar has a little bit of advantage over the Iotavx PA3. Now, when it comes to actual dynamics and even what I would call, that initial attack, with that first hit of a drum, I tell you, both amplifiers are almost on that same playing field. I was going back between both of them. I have a lot of different music I listen to that is very dynamic. One of my #1 tracks that I listen to is actually Bosie, Livens, and Stevens, and their track called Denade. That track has dynamic swings like you would not believe. And overall, I got to call dynamics and that initial attack, they were about on the same level overall. But once we started getting into detail refinement, instrument separation, yeah, I got to give the win to the Vidar amplifier. It does sound a little bit cleaner and a little bit faster in that regard. But here is what is so funny, you all, is when it comes to the actual sound stage, I was very impressed with the Iotavx SA3. Now, I will tell you all, when it comes to your soundstage, this is going to matter a lot of what speakers you are using. But your amplifiers are going to highly influence the overall performance also. And when I was comparing the two against each other, one thing I noticed about the Iota was when it came to that depth of the soundstage overall, I could hear deeper into the soundstage. Not only that, the Iota had very good localization, meaning it was easier for me to spot out the artist and the instruments on the soundstage. It was almost like my speakers had just a little bit better of that center imaging overall. Now, yes, again, the Vidar, you know, the clarity and overall detail refinement and instrument separation was just a little bit better than the Iota. This is why I was shocked with this. But when it came to the soundstage, the performance that the Vidar had over the Iota was the airiness of the soundstage. Again, the Vidar amplifier, in my opinion, you know, the lower treble has a little bit of an emphasis on it, and this really helps to have a little bit more of an airy soundstage versus the Iotavx SA3. But you know, when I was sitting back and I was listening for those micro details and micro dynamics overall, again, I am shocked because the Iotavx SA3, this is a strong point of this amplifier for its price point. It barely, just by a little bit, outperformed the Vidar amplifier when it came to those micro details. But one thing I will say about the Vidar amplifier, many of y'all probably already know, I listen to a lot of electric guitar. A lot of electric guitar. And when I hear the guitarist hit those strings really hard and that decay goes out into the room, yes, the Vidar amplifier with that decay from, you know, electric guitar, it does sound a little bit more natural, and the decay does go out a little bit further in the room. But all in all, y'all, I don't want to sit here and sweeten it up or fluff anything up, but overall, the Iotavx SA3 done a great job competing with the Schiit Vidar amplifier. In my subjective, humble opinion, and this is very subjective. Now, when I was sitting back, you all, and I was A/B testing the Iota against the Vidar, I spent a lot of time in doing this. And there was things I liked about the Iota better than I did the Vidar. And there was things I liked about the Vidar that I liked over the Iota. But once everything started adding up, by my subjective opinion, yes, the Vidar amplifier to me has just a little bit more performance overall. And I know you all love percentages, and I would give the Vidar, to my taste, about a 3 to 5% advantage. And there will also be people out there that would actually prefer the warmer sounding Iotavx SA3 over the Schiit Vidar amplifier. Again, this is going to come down to a matter of taste. It's going to come down to your room. It's going to come down to all your other gear and speakers that you are pairing up together. But on that performance level, even though the amplifiers were very close in competition, I still got to give the Schiit Vidar a 3 to 5% advantage. And having a 5-year warranty with Schiit Audio is pretty awesome. Until next time, this is TJ, the Stereo-Bargainphile.